Welcome back. This is Weeknights.
Weeknights. Yeah.
That's right.
Ooh yeah. Ooh
Condom.
yeah. I've never had the right. Ooh yeah. I was trying to do like a KC. Ooh yeah. And
Uh,
I've never been good at that, but he is the king of that.
gotcha.
The promise
Well,
you made me. Okay, I'm done.
well, listen, if you want it to be R&B Friday, go for it. You know what I'm saying?
All the things you told me. You said you'd never leave me.
That's
We'll
right.
be together for eternity. I
Mad
love
Live.
this see. Right.
Mad Live. But it's a
Now
good
it's
record.
all in the past.
Right.
Now I know our love will last. All right, I'm done.
All right. And there you go. Y'all have been serenaded.
Right.
I am JD, a.k.a. He Who Pods, a.k.a. Rearview Mirror. Y'all see me reflecting. You know what I'm saying?
What up? I am Dashing D, aka Dash, aka the real king of R&B. Aka some other things.
Yeah. Too many AKAs.
Right. And this is Weeknights,
Yeah.
where we give you the latest, the greatest, and the shameless.
The entertainment industry.
Yep.
So let's talk about the greatest. Not that he's the greatest, but that this news is the greatest. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Just to be clear, I don't want them to think I'm saying he's the greatest. Busta Rhymes has landed his first movie role in almost a decade. There will be a Naked Gun reboot, and Busta is all up in it. And so it says here, Busta Rhymes has secured a role in the upcoming Naked Gun reboot, rounding out an all-star cast that includes Lisa Koshy, WWE superstar Cody Rhodes, and veteran actress CCH Pounder. Deadline has confirmed that the ex-leader of the New School, I don't know why they do stuff like that, but anyway, whatever. Let me just read. Signed on to the film on Thursday, as of Thursday, May 23rd, and in an as yet undisclosed role. Other stars confirmed to be part of the reboot include Liam Neeson, who will be playing Detective Frank Drebin,
Not
Pamela
Ralph
Anderson.
Fiennes.
Eh?
Not Ralph Fiennes.
No. Pamela Anderson, Paul Michael Hauser, and Kevin Durand. A Busta's role in Naked Gun reboot will mark the first time in nearly 10 years that he'll be starring in a film. His last film role was in 2016's King of the Dance Hall opposite Nick Cannon.
Playing opposite Nick Cannon in a movie called King of the Dance Hall is funny.
That's it is. That's very funny.
But this is great for Busta. Good for him.
Yes, this
Um,
is great news.
I feel like Busta's having a really good moment right now.
He had a great album that came out. He's on tour with Missy Elliott and Sierra. I will
Yeah,
be going to that tour. I'm excited.
the tour starts July 4th, actually.
There you go. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
so he'll be on tour. The tour
He'll
hasn't
be on
begun yet.
tour. Yeah, he's not quite
So
on tour. They're
tease me.
getting ready. We've been seeing images and things from them rehearsing. So they are gearing up. Missy, Busta, and Ciara, they are gearing up to go on tour, and they will be on tour in just over a month.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun summer.
Yeah, and I'm curious about this Naked Gun movie. That's a really interesting cast. I'm glad Busta was a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And being that this is an announcement, I hope he doesn't have some minor role. I hope he has a
Right.
decent sized role.
I hope so too.
Yeah, but if not, it's good that he's getting back out there, even if it is a minor role. Getting in a movie is not easy, whether it's a minor role or a major role, and I don't want to sleep on that accomplishment. A lot of times people want to do that. A lot of times people do say like, "Oh, but they didn't even have a big role. They were in that movie for like 2 seconds," and it's still not easy to get into a movie. I can't just get in a movie tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't work that way. So, this is still a big accomplishment. I'm happy for Buster getting back out there, and I hope we get to see him do more of these types of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, of course. I'm excited. I feel like he's been doing a lot lately, and it's nice to see the legends come back around for another trip, spin the block a little bit. Because too often artists kind of just phase out and we don't really see or hear from them anymore. So it's nice that there are so many artists that we grew up on that are kind of having this resurgence.
Yeah.
People are excited about them again. They're getting jobs again, and
Yeah.
they're super talented. There's no reason why you should just kind of disappear into the atmosphere when someone young and hot comes on the scene. But unfortunately, that's kind of the way the industry works.
Right.
So it's been nice to see so many artists kind of take back their moment, which is what he's doing. I feel like Misty's doing that. There's a lot of artists right now out there who are doing this. So this is great.
Yes, I agree.
Because I don't want to be like, you know, maybe my birthday's coming up, so I'm thinking a lot about like my age and like where I am in life, that sort of thing. And I
Hmm.
don't, I don't want to be old and forgotten. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I want to continue to build on
Absolutely.
what I'm building on. I want to continue to grow. I want when I'm 50 to still, and 50 is young, don't get me wrong, but
It is.
I want when I'm 50, when I'm 60 to still be, the things that I've done to still make an impact or still be relevant, So I totally get like they must be thrilled to the moon and back. And I love this for, all of our legends. So, go Busta.
Yes, go Buster. All right, so that's that. I would like to dive into a topic we spoke about a while ago, that me and you off pod have discussed a couple more times since then.
Hmm.
Since the Buster and the Buster, not Buster, since the Drake and Kendrick beef, of course, writing has come up again, right? People are discussing whether Drake writes his songs or does not write his songs. We know in the battle his writers were brought up. Kendrick said, "Yeah, it is a 20v1, maybe more than that if I got to go up against you and all of your writers." And then also there was a clip that circulated of Simba speaking about writing in the industry and how uh, putting hit records together works, or even just putting records together works in the industry a lot of times. So this is something that we've seen come up a lot since then. So I wanted to discuss it. Also because on the pod at one point you made a comment saying that we both know it has been confirmed that Drake and Kendrick both have writers. You want to tell the audience where that came from?
So somebody from Kendrick's camp, I don't remember the person's name. I don't have it in front of me. But
Hmm.
somebody from Kendrick's camp did a Discord some weeks back in response to what was going on with the beef. He basically says, I'm paraphrasing, but he says something to the effect of he said something about people writing with Kendrick or helping Kendrick write when he was writing all of the raps for the beef. So when I said it on the pod, when I was like, oh, well, we know that all of them, both of them use writers, it was, to me, it was, well, this is like a normal thing. When I said it, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not remembering exactly what brought us to that specific topic, it wasn't so much me shitting on them, because I feel like, often in hip hop, the conversation is you're not respected if you don't write for yourself, or you can't be considered a part of certain conversations when it comes to who's at the top or who's a good lyricist or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because of the fact that you do not write your own music. In
Hmm.
my mind, people in the music industry, period, don't always write their music. That's
Okay.
just in my mind, the way my mind was thinking about it is just that's pretty commonplace. I understand for hip hop there's this additional layer that you have to consider because because of the style of the music and because of the way the music was birthed.
Mm-hmm.
Writing your music makes sense.
Yeah.
It is the most logical thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I totally understand that. But again, I wasn't trying to um shade Kendrick or anything like that, or shade Drake. It was more just to say, well, aren't the playing fields leveled? Kind of. Sure, lyrically, one of them could be better than the other, but
Okay.
as far as how they get to the point that they get to,
Mm-hmm.
are there similarities? And to me, what it sounded like at the time was that there were similarities. Drake had his dudes there who help him with whatever and give input or say, oh no, not that line, this line, or whatever the case may be, whatever writing means. Basically, this led to us, you and I, having a conversation about what it does mean for someone to get a writing credit on, well, anything really.
Yeah.
Because I am coming from the vantage point of someone who's never been in a studio to write a song, or
Mm-hmm.
never sat with other people and tried to collaborate on writing music.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we often look at albums and we look at the credits, and this person has a writing credit, that person has a writing credit. People talk about Beyonce and how a lot of Beyonce's music is not written by her, but when you look at the credits, it'll be like Beyonce, The Dream, and somebody else.
Yeah.
So we wanted to come on here and talk about what that really means. And I mean, because you are very, I think we both have a lot of focus on music, but in different ways. Like I am a surveyor of music. I am a consumer of music. I am someone who likes to think about music intelligently, and not just, oh, I'm just gonna dance to this and not think about the words, or not think about um the way this was made or whatever. And that's just because I've always been a big someone who's big on entertainment and pop culture and whatever. When I'm looking at it through my eyes, I am looking at it as someone who really does consume music, and is very disconnected from the creation of music. I have never created music in my life. The most I've done is go on GarageBand and like create an intro for my podcast. That's
Yeah.
about the extent. Excuse me, wait, I'm downplaying, okay? I know how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb on the viola, okay? And Do
Okay.
I Diddy. I know how to play those two songs on the
Mm-hmm.
viola.
Okay.
So yes, I was in orchestra for several years. But that is the extent to my musical abilities. I'm more of someone who has knowledge about music. You are very different in that, well, you have the knowledge, but you also create music. You have also collaborated with people who create music, so you see it in a very different way. So sometimes I may say things passively that may not even be true. It's just what I think or what I thought. So that's why this makes this an interesting conversation, because you could teach me something along with everybody else.
Yeah, I thought it was a good conversation. I do make music. I've collaborated with a lot of people. I've been part of groups. I've done solo music. Um, and so I wanted to discuss some of the things that were said, and some of the things that um, have come out kind of since that Kendrick and Drake beef, right? So I found the post. So the person's name is Ada V is here.
Mm-hmm.
And they tweeted, Kendrick's very close friend, Italian Fiesta, did a Discord interview today. Here are some of the things he said. And so there's this whole list of things that were said, which I took a screenshot of because it's really small. One of the things, which is the thing that you were referring to, is it says PG Lang writers are miles better than OVO writers.
Yes.
And so that's the only thing that it says about writing. It doesn't say anything else about people writing. It speaks about Kendrick and Cole. Says a couple of things about different things about the. It's mostly speaking about the background of stuff.
Yes, but that was indeed the part that I was referencing.
Referencing, right? And so I'm just skimming through. There's nothing really else here that says anything about writing. It's more about the songs and the song making process, how many songs were recorded, how people felt about disses, etc. None of that really matters in this conversation. But yeah, it did say writers were better than other writers. So that's what I wanted to discuss. So I think there's a lot of things to address here. I don't have the clip of Simba saved, but Simba was asked about writers. He said, we all have writers. He said that today the music making process is about creating I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember everything word for word. But he said basically that today in the industry, it's not about who's the best rapper. It's about who could create hits. And creating hits is a collaborative process. Whether he's writing them for himself or for others, there are always collaborators there. I wish I knew the young lady's name. There was also a young lady a couple months ago who was very upset that she didn't get the proper writing credits on some industry projects. She said that she wrote songs for Beyonce and other people, songs that she had been shopping around the industry. And when the songs came out, she didn't have any writing credits. She was paid for the song as a songwriter. She has reference tracks of these songs that she wrote all alone by herself, that she might have even played instruments on during the production piece, and how she was paid for it, but was not credited for it.
I would have played the
Um,
viola for free, by the way, for Beyonce.
okay.
I would have totally played the viola. I don't know. Why didn't anyone call me?
I don't think they knew. You know what I'm saying?
I would have played. We could have done a little duo ditty for Cowboy Carter.
I'm sure that would have been loved.
Impeccable.
So, all of these things I think are worth discussing. So, I want to start with the last example first, and then we'll kind of go forward. When you are shopping around songs, I have never shopped around songs, but my understanding is that when you are selling songs, it basically is about your name, right? So, if the Dream shops a song, if Neo shops a song, they're going to get writing credits. But when you are a certain caliber of star, that's part of the deal. If I sell a song to like a top 5 artist, top 10 artist, they're not going to give me any credit because it's not a name that the industry knows and recognizes, right? And you're also getting a large lump sum for this money, for this song. Excuse me. Is it foul? Some can say yes. Some can say it doesn't matter who you are. If you wrote a song for a top 5 artist, you should be credited, especially because this will help you getting further business, right? So in the example of the young lady, she's saying she wrote songs for Beyonce and wasn't credited. And so, yeah, it's easy to sell to another top 5 or top 10 artist, top 20 artist, if you can go and say, oh, I wrote this song for Beyonce. And her beef is that it's hard for her to do that because of the fact that she's not credited. So because she's not credited, it's hard
Yeah,
to come say, hey, I wrote these 5 records for
right.
top 20
She could be
artists.
lying.
Because you could be lying. And so she's saying, I've had to pull out my reference tracks. I've had to show receipts of emails and different things. I shouldn't have to go through any of that. And she even got criticized. No, go. What you can say?
I was gonna say there should at least be paperwork that says that you wrote on something that, like, I'm not saying that a person has to get paid for it or that it has to be put in the credits that the public sees, which I'm not arguing for or against that, just to be clear. But what I am saying is if you're not going to pay someone, if you're not going to put it
No, they
in
are getting paid. They're selling the song. It's a sale.
I thought you were saying that she didn't get paid for what she did.
No. She's saying she didn't get credited. So when she goes to the next person, let's say for example, she wrote for
No, I know.
Beyonce and
Yeah,
now she's going to the Migos. And the Migos are working on an album, and she says, "Hey guys, I have this song." They're like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "Oh, I wrote 5 songs for Beyonce."
That okay? I understand what you mean. I must have misheard you. I thought at one point you said that she didn't get paid.
No, no,
Um,
no. I'm saying you do get paid, but you don't. In those instances, you're not going to be credited.
right. So what I'm saying is, then there should be something, right? If this is a job essentially, or some sort of, like, you did a thing and you need to be able to make a living off of this. This should just be like general practice where there's some sort of paperwork that defines that this was your contribution. Not, and there can be non-disclosures against that if that's
Yeah.
necessary, but it should be written somewhere so that when you do go out into the world and try to make a living off of this skill that you have, then you can prove it very easily and you don't have to dip into reference tracks and things like that. That just sounds like so much work to do to prove something that you actually did.
And that was her beef. And I was gonna say is she was criticized for that. There were people who criticized her and said, "You should have shut the fuck up because now you're not gonna get any business. You're complaining about writing for Beyonce. You should shut up." And so I'm not saying I agree with that. What I will say is this: I just want to make it clear. This is not really about my opinion. This is more about informing the public, right? And so in those instances it's hard, right? Because you are someone who the industry is relying on but may not give the proper recognition, and I always think we should give props where props are due. If I decide I'm going to do an R&B album but I can't write any R&B, whoever I buy the songs from or whoever I have writing for me should be credited. And that's not always the case. The same thing happens with Drake. Drake has had R&B songs that he's done. That's why I use that example, where Drake is not crediting everyone. There was a lot of hoopla about that when all the Quentin Miller stuff happened, right? And so um, it's not strange for certain artists, for certain genres to use other writers. Hip hop, it is frowned upon because of the way hip hop has always had this MC component where it is who is the best writer, who is the person who's the most creative, who is the person that's the most talented MC. And so today, that's why all of this is being discussed, right? So in that instance of writing for big artists, unfortunately, you're not going to be credited a lot of times unless you are another big name. We very often see the Dream in Beyonce's writing credits because the Dream is like her number one writer.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean she doesn't have other writers. It's just the Dream is too big of a name not to put in the credits. He is negotiating that when he's selling these songs or writing these songs, right? Because you might say you might not have a song already written for Beyonce, but if Beyonce calls the Dream and says, "Hey, I'm working on a new album, I need you," he's gonna come. But part of his negotiation, part of his contract is going to be, I need these writing credits.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of the downside, right? Where Neo, there's certain people in the industry, Sean Garrett, there's certain people who we're going to hear their name and see their name in writing credits because they're just too big of a star. Brian Michael Cox, John to Austin. There's certain writers you're going to see those names, but there's others you're just not because they don't have a big enough name yet to where they are going to be put in the credits. It sucks, but unfortunately, that's the thing. As a writer, my advice is try to negotiate where you can put your name in the credits.
Mhm.
It's not going to be easy, especially with those top 20 artists. No, if I write a song for Jay-Z, he's probably not putting JD Nero in the credits, especially if you want the maximum amount of money that he's paying writers. Not, I'm using Jay-Z as an example,
I understand.
just to be clear.
I,
So that's kind of the pros and the cons, right? Where you have a song for this top 20 artist, you could prove it. Like the young lady said, some of the songs I sold to these artists, I'd written 5 and 6 years before. They were actually on my SoundCloud, and I had to take them down after I sold them. So
I,
it's a weird situation, but it's a pro and a con where hey, I wrote this song 5 years ago, and then Beyonce wanted it, and I sold it to her or whatever top 20 artists. I don't want to keep saying Beyonce, but the young lady did say Beyonce by name. That's why I'm saying Beyonce.
no, I understand. And I just want to point out, I know that you were speaking to a very specific caliber of writers, but I noticed that no girls were mentioned. So I just want to shout out a few girls. Victoria Monet and Missy Elliott and Candy Burris, Tiny. They've been writing for people for millions and millions of years. Some of them used to be artists. I shouldn't say used to be, but were artists like that were of the time at some point. But now, some of them just write, or some of them are. We know Victoria Monet is now, leaning into making her own music more. But I just wanted to point them out because I realized that we talked about so many guys, and there's so many women that write for all of these big stars.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, so it's a weird situation, but it's kind of the pros and the cons of writing for other people, especially those caliber of artists, right? Like
Mhm.
if you write a song for Ariana Grande, you're probably not going to be credited as the writer for Ariana Grande. So that's the first thing I wanted to address.
I got
Um,
I got a story about Ariana Grande for you off pod. Just
Got
remind me.
so the next thing is what Simba said. Simba said, he's talking about creating hit records, not about being the best rapper. To
Mhm.
me, that excludes this whole conversation then. Because the conversation is about being the best rapper. If we're talking about a rap battle, if we're talking about Kendrick versus Drake, this is about who's the better rapper, not who's the better hit maker. So everything he said might be true. Maybe in the industry, they don't do hit records without other writers. I don't know the answer to be true or not true. I'm not in the industry. But a hip hop battle is about who's the better MC, who is creating
Yeah.
the better record, who's saying the wittier things, who all of those things are MC things, right? So
Yeah, of course.
if the battle was about who's the bigger hit maker, there would be no battle. Drake is the biggest hit maker in hip hop right now. It's not really, there really isn't anything to dispute
Right.
because we know he has surpassed the Beatles and Michael Jackson and everyone else on the charts. So there's really nothing to discuss if that's the conversation. To
Mhm.
me, that wasn't the conversation. So I don't really have much to say about what Simba said. I don't even think Simba's lying. I think what he's saying is probably true, but
Yeah.
that wasn't really the discussion. And even though that was his answer, it wasn't really the discussion. So to me, there's not much to say about what Simba said. Because he
But
said it's
also,
not about being the best rapper, it's about making hit records today.
yeah.
He said we all could rap. That's not the conversation. I disagree. That is the conversation if we're talking about a rap battle.
So I agree with you. Simba wasn't Simba also. I know he said those things, but wasn't he also one of the people who said that he wrote for Drake, but he didn't like really get credit for it, or he didn't get paid for it, or something like that? Is
Oh,
that correct?
I don't know honestly.
So maybe it wasn't Simba. There was somebody else in the last few weeks with all this Drake stuff who came out and said that,
Oh,
oh,
Daylight.
Daylight, it was Daylight. So
Daylight says he wrote most of Back to Back.
so here's my question: How much? What is the etiquette? What is the protocol? Well, protocol and etiquette are different, but what is the protocol, and then what is the etiquette? Because
For what? Be specific.
I was about to say,
Oh, I'm sorry.
because you have people who come out years later or whenever, and people have done this to Drake. It's clear people in the industry don't like Drake very much, and so they do things like this to him. They've done things like this to him before. But I'm sure he's not the only one. I'm sure if we did our homework, I know that we've heard about other people doing this as well, where they come out and say, "Well, I wrote this, and then they didn't give me this," or I didn't really, or this person is a multimillionaire, and I'm here making pennies, and I contributed to this. What is you basically gave us like what is standard practice. then what is the etiquette, or what should it be when someone has, and I know the rules may be different for hip hop, so if you want to separate like everything else versus hip hop, that's fine. But I'm just trying to figure out what is the etiquette, because I would be frustrated as an artist, and maybe they don't even really, or maybe they aren't really even privy to this. They probably have tons of lawyers and people who handle these things. But I would be frustrated at the idea that we worked together on something, whether you wrote most of it or whatever, and we had our business dealings. And you knew that I'm this huge star. You wrote this music for me and I performed it, and and I recorded the song. What is the expectation there? Like, how's that relationship supposed to work? Because then you have someone like Daylight who's coming out now, and I'm not saying Daylight is wrong, but what should it be? Is it that you should have people sign NDAs? I feel like when they do NDAs, then it comes out in another way, and then it looks like you were being shady as an artist, especially a hip hop artist, for not sharing that someone, at that point I guess it's considered ghostwriting. But like, what Daylight did okay?
Um, okay, so I don't know what the industry standard is because I'm not an industry artist. I am of the old school belief that nobody should be writing your shit.
Okay.
If you're an MC, you shouldn't need anyone else to write anything for you.
Hmm.
And to be clear, writing something for you means a large contribution.
Okay.
If I have 5 people in the studio with me at my next recording session and they're giving me feedback, hey, that thing you said is kind of outdated. Today, this is how the kids say it. Maybe change that part. Or if I'm working on the hook and you say, hey, JD, you know what? It'll be better if you kind of harmonize that last part. It would be more catchy, right? Those things are not considered writing, right? Writing is if I'm in the studio playing the beat and you say, hey, Jay, I came up with half a verse. You want to use this half a verse and credit me? That's a conversation, right?
Hmm.
And so even if you came up with the last line of the hook, a lot of times people are not going to get credited. It becomes a conversation of a couple of things. One, who are you working with? Two, what's their relationship, right? If you're a close friend, you probably don't even care about that. You're probably just happy to know, hey, I helped JD come up with the last line of his hook, right? Um, if you are someone who is a writer, then you're probably going to say, I would like to get credited. Let's discuss how, which means it also has to come down to your knowledge of the business, right? Because you may not even know you could get paid. You might just think, I'm going to help my boy and that's it.
Right.
So you might not even be thinking about the fact that there's something called splits, which we discussed here before, which is basically how you get paid percentage wise of a record, right? And there's lots of different pieces to that puzzle. But if you don't even know what the word splits is, if you don't know to have that discussion, then you're not having that discussion because you could come up with a person's entire hook and
Hmm.
not know about the splits conversation, not know you could get paid, and just think I'm helping a friend. But if you do know, and I'm in the studio with Dashing D recording her upcoming, this is an example, recording her upcoming album, her debut album, I know a couple things. If I write a whole hook, I want to get a percentage because I wrote the whole hook.
My album
The
is
hook,
June 2025.
so the hook is also an important piece, if not the most important piece.
Make or break a song.
Exactly. So that's also very different than saying, hey, I got these 4 lines you might want to add to your verse.
Right.
You get paid for either one, but the hook gives you a bigger role in the song, right? What are people going to remember the most of a song is usually the hook. Your contribution matters, right? And also your level of knowledge, right? So if you say, hey, I wrote this whole hook, you could get paid for that hook. You know what I'm saying? Or maybe not out of pocket right then and there, where Dashing D says, all right, Jay, here's $10,000 because you wrote the hook, but maybe 10% of the record, 30% of the record. What are we talking? Publishing, streaming rights. There's all these different parts, right?
Mhm.
So all of that matters. But so I say that to say I don't know the industry standard. I am under the belief that you shouldn't have writers. If you do have writers, they should get paid. they should get credited. That's my belief. If I was a top 10 artist, I would have people signing NDAs. I would not allow people to do this, but I would also be paying people properly. I have written hooks for other people, and I have not gotten paid because I didn't want to. I didn't want a percentage.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe I was already on the song anyway, right? So maybe to me, it didn't matter. Me personally, if I'm already on the song and I came up with the hook, I might ask, can I do the hook? Right? Hey, listen, since I came up with the hook, can I be the one to record it? Because even though I didn't get paid, when people now hear this record, they hear me.
They hear you. Yeah.
And so they say, man, Jay killed that hook. And they also know that means Jay probably wrote that hook. So am
Right.
I getting paid 40% of the record? No, I could argue that. You could make a case where, hey, I wrote this hook, I'm recording this hook, people are hearing me on the hook and a verse. This is almost my song.
Right.
I should get paid. Now, you could make that case. When I've been in that circumstance, I haven't really wanted to. I just wanted to be part of the record. Maybe I fought to get to be the person who says the hook. Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes as soon as you write the hook, the person was like, hey, that's a dope hook. You should record that right now.
Okay.
And just like, oh, okay, great. It really depends on a lot of circumstances and situations. I don't know what the industry standard should be. My thought is it depends. Like, for example, we know Whitney Houston did not write most of her music. We don't credit Whitney Houston as the greatest writer of all time. We credit her as one of the greatest voices of all time. And if you look through the writing credits,
Weeknights Apple's list.
yeah, it's a topic for another time.
Oh, I mean,
Um,
we already litigated Apple's list, but you said her name, and I was like, that's just hell. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey didn't make the list.
Ridiculous.
Um, But we know that. And so we know on Whitney Houston's albums, there's lots of writers in those credits. Even though Whitney Houston is one of them, she's not the only person there, right? And so, like I brought up when we had the conversation about Partisan Fontaine, we know Party writes lots of records for the lady rappers, right? We know that. And so at this point, people are saying he's the go-to guy for the lady rappers records. Like if you need a hit and you're a lady rapper, you should go to Party. So he's going to be credited, right? And he should be. And so that's my belief. My belief is you shouldn't be writing, excuse me. My belief is no one should be writing your shit. No one should be writing your rhymes. But if they are, then they should be credited and paid accordingly. But I want to make it clear that someone who's chilling in the studio with you and has a small contribution is not the same as shopping around the record. If I have a record that I have no intention of recording, and I am, let's just say I come up with an R&B record tonight, and I'm not an R&B singer. Yeah, I can go try to sell the R&B record. And if someone buys it, they have to pay me and credit me. But that's not the same thing as the example of me being in the studio and my boy Days the Emperor saying, you think about this for your last line of the record. Or, hey, I thought about a couple bars. Here's what you think about changing this around. That's just feedback. Feedback from friends and confidants is okay. I think it's very different when someone has a major contribution to a record. That's when the writer conversation comes, right? If somebody wrote half of my record or half of a verse or some big impactful contribution. Again, the hook is only 4 bars that we usually repeat, right? We usually say 4 lines and then repeat the 4 lines. That's your 8-bar hook a lot of times. Yeah, that's a small contribution in writing, right? Writing 4 lines is not a lot, but that's a different impact because it's a chunk of the record. In fact, it's a big chunk and the most memorable chunk. So in that instance, yeah, if somebody writes a hook, they wrote for you, yes. Um, so I think that changes the conversation. I think saying that there were a bunch of people in the studio and they gave feedback, you want that a lot of times, right? You want to say like, I'm going to say this really nerdy Star Wars thing. Well, then I'm going to call my boy, who's the biggest Star Wars fan I know, and ask him, hey, this is what I said on the record. You think that was good? He might say, no, I would add Boba Fett because you mentioned Jango Fett. He said, that was smart. I didn't think about that. Thanks.
And that makes sense to me. But then what? And obviously, this person's Discord. I mean, everything with a grain of salt, because I don't know how legitimate it is, right? It's something that's on the internet. It could be completely false. But for argument's sake, him saying that, because what is it, P Lang?
PG Lang has better
PG
writers than OVO. That was the
PG Lang is Kendrick's
label.
label, right? So if something like that is being said, everybody was, some of the conversation the last few weeks has been about, Drake doesn't write. We're having this conversation again. Kendrick is different in that Kendrick is writing all his stuff, and so if that's not true,
If what's not true. If Kendrick has writers.
yeah.
Okay.
What do you mean? It's that's not true. It's not true that Kendrick has writers.
Oh, you said if that's not true. I'm trying to figure out
Oh,
what you're saying is not
yeah.
true.
If it's not true that Kendrick is the only person who ever writes his music, then where do we stand on that? And the reason I ask that is because a lot of people may not agree that you need to be fair to Drake, but I do think that Drake catches a lot of strays for the way he does things and what he does. And even with the recent beef between him and Kendrick, people were eager to litigate everything that was being said about him, whereas people are very quick to believe that Kendrick couldn't possibly have done the things that he was accused of, or that
Yeah, but that's a different conversation. That don't got to
henceforth.
do with writing. That has to do with Drake's report card. That has to do with Drake's reputation of being a person who's sleeping with other people's women and doing foul shit in the public eye. That got nothing to do with writers.
I'm not. Okay. I was trying to say that across the board, no matter what it was that was said about Kendrick, whether it was about his life or his lyrics, everyone, not everyone, a lot of people were very just pro Kendrick blindly. No, there were so many people who didn't want to consider that anything negative about Kendrick was the truth.
Yeah,
So I'm not trying to make this about their personal lives, but I am trying to construct the narrative that people don't think that Drake is credible, and they do think that Kendrick is credible, or they're not quick to believe things that might be said about Kendrick. So if someone is saying that Kendrick has writers, what do we do with that? What does
nothing.
the culture do with that? Because okay.
Nothing. My opinion is nothing because it all of that what you're saying, it's not about writers. It's about report card and reputation. People believed the Kendrick stuff because Kendrick has an impeccable reputation. People did not believe, or people very quickly questioned the things that Drake said because Drake does not have a good reputation. We also know for a fact, based on writing credits, even if you never heard any rumors, if you pick up your phone and go to a Drake record, including some of the diss records, you see that there are other writers credited. And so that is where that comes from. Now, if we're just going to speak about the writing portion, labels hire writers. Sony, Def Jam, Universal, PG Lang, OVO, it doesn't matter what label. Labels hire writers. Neo was once a writer for a label. Before we ever heard his name, he was writing for a label. And that's what they do. Just like a regular employee for Starbucks is hired and they're just on staff, this is their job. Labels do that with writers. Big labels that can afford it, this is what they do for several reasons. Do I believe Kendrick wrote every hook that we've ever heard on a song of his? No, he's had plenty of people featured on hooks. For example, the hit record Love with him and Rihanna. I don't believe he wrote that hook. I'm sure someone else wrote that hook. Rihanna sings the hook. Rihanna probably didn't even write that hook. probably one of these writers that I'm referencing, they probably wrote it. I haven't looked at the credits for that record, but if we go, we probably see more names than just Kendrick and Rihanna. So that's my answer. I think when it comes to having other writers, it goes back to what I said. I don't think you should have a writer, but if you do, they should be credited and paid accordingly. That's all. Drake specifically, Drake will always have writers. And the problem with Drake having writers is it's hard to decipher what was really written by who, right? Because Drake does R&B and pop records. I think if you're doing R&B and pop records and you're a rapper, you might not have the brain to come up with those things. I don't write I don't do pop music or R&B music. So yeah, me personally, I would probably have to outsource that content. So there would be writers. I don't think Drake came up with Tootsie Slide by himself, right? He probably had a writer because that's not a regular rap record. That makes sense to me. That's okay to me. But the challenge with Drake is out here saying he's the greatest rapper alive. You can't be the greatest rapper alive if you have writers. And that is the argument that constantly comes up with Drake. And that's what's hard to decipher because we know for a fact, yes, people have written R&B records. Yes, people have helped him write pop records. Well, then people quickly assume that same thing has happened with some of the rap records. But then we have people like Kanye who's come out and said, I love having Drake around when I write albums because having Drake with you is actually like having 10 writers. Drake is so creative and good that he's like hiring 10 writers for your one project. So do I believe that Drake is incapable of writing? No, absolutely not. I think even in his early career, we saw that Drake had a phenomenal pen. I think even in these diss records, we've seen that Drake has a great pen. Drake is very creative and can do a lot of things. But we also know Drake has hired writers. So that's what makes it questionable when you're saying things like, I'm the greatest ever. Yeah, but the greatest how? Because you've had help on records that we know about. Some of your biggest records, we know people were paid to write on them. And so that's the challenge. I think if Drake never says I'm the greatest rapper, we don't care. We don't even have this conversation about writers. Because the pop and R&B records, we expect that. We don't expect Drake to be writing the pop and R&B records. No. But what do we do with them saying Kendrick has writers? I don't know. Nothing, in my opinion. Go look at the writing credits. That's all you could really do. I mean, the believe and not believe stuff comes down to the reputation and the report card. So it's possible that Daylight also wrote these diss records. Daylight is cool with Kendrick, so maybe Daylight wrote one of the records. For example, if years from now Daylight comes out and says, "I wrote not Family Matters. I wrote Meet the Grams." I'd have a lot of questions. I wouldn't instantly believe him. I'd have a lot of questions. But Daylight is also a hard person to discuss because Daylight has done stuff on camera that we know is very questionable stuff. There was a battle rap event where Daylight took a shit on stage. Yeah. So there are things that people have done that we have to call into question. He's done antics for clicks and public things. That same question those same things would come to mind if 10 years from now he said, "Hey, I wrote all of Meet the Grants." We have to think about the person's report card, their image and reputation are going to come to mind. Why is no one questioning Kendrick? Because he has a pretty good report card. We only ever heard stand up stuff about Kendrick prior to this battle. Now, is it fair? No, it's not fair. I agree.
That's why I'm not really saying anything because it's like it's kind of corny, but it is what it is.
If I have a reputation for being a person who yells and somebody says, "Hey, Jay yelled at me," you're probably going to believe him.
I understand how reputation works. I think that when you're talking about public figures, that can be dangerous. I get the person who behaves badly or does things that are considered negative. I get that that person will always end up, having to prove themselves when certain things are called to question. I understand that. But I think that the other side to that is, I think that there are people that we kind of just blindly follow, or we blindly believe when they say things or do things or whatever the case may be. And that in itself can be dangerous, which is why, to me, it's unfair. It's like, I'm not saying that the person with the good reputation should be taken down for one accusation about something, but I do think we should always have questions. I think we should allow ourselves to think critically about what is being shared with us, so that we don't fall into a place where we believe everything, or that we don't consider another side to things. That's it. So to me, because the conversation that we're also having is that it matters in hip hop. So if it matters in hip hop, then then if this is a thing about Kendrick, then it should matter, because he's considered in conversations that are about top rappers, about top hip hop artists of all time. He is considered in those conversations. In the same way you're saying that Drake, there's a question about considering Drake in those conversations, then if that's then my perspective is that something, I'm not asking just a rhetorical question, but is that something that then needs to be considered when it comes to Kendrick? Or is it that just that we're just gonna leave it alone and act like it doesn't exist because it doesn't serve our narrative that Kendrick is the stand-up guy that, has never put us in a position to make us think that there was something else?
Right, but the problem is it becomes a thing where the alcoholic is saying someone else is an alcoholic. And that's why it's like, yeah, but why are you even saying that? We've never heard that Kendrick had writers. So it could be true. But the person saying it is the person who we know has writers. That's why it's like, okay, like, are you one? Why would we believe you? Two, what evidence have you presented that this is true? Three, why have we never heard this before?
The only reason I know you're talking about Drake, but the only reason I even brought this into our conversation previously is because someone close to Kendrick said it. So
But
that
he didn't say someone wrote for Kendrick. He said PG Lang has better writers than OVO.
okay, that's true.
So again, I don't think I'll say it a third time. I don't think anybody should have writers if we are talking about hip hop. But that's an old school belief, like Simba said. And I think, okay, then if that's an old school belief and you have writers, then pay them and credit them. Everyone.
That's fine. I just don't understand why someone would bring that up in the conversation about the beef if it wasn't relevant. And I guess that's where my confusion is. I don't understand why somebody would bring that up. It wouldn't have a place in the list of things that they talked about having pertaining to the beef that was going on if it didn't matter. That's why that stood out to me. But I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, so maybe I'm completely wrong.
Got it. I mean, we weren't there, so we won't know.
I
I
don't know.
say if you wrote, you should get paid and credited.
Yeah, I just think sometimes things end up a bit one sided just because of our opinions of people. Not you and me, just in general. I think it ends up not being fair all the time because of that. So
Well, yeah, I already said it's not fair.
yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. But that's where it comes from. It comes from somebody having a bad reputation.
Mhm.
So if a kid's report card is they don't behave in class, then when someone says they misbehaved, people are going to assume, yeah, well, they don't behave anyway, so of course they misbehave. Now, if you're going to tell somebody in that same instance, the honor roll student who it's never been said that they misbehave. If you say, hey, the honor roll student was jumping up and down on top of the teacher's desk on Friday, people are going to say, nah, you're lying. That doesn't even make sense. Why would they do that? It's no different. Is it impossible? No, of course it's possible. But people are going to say it's not likely. It's not probable. The probability is very low. And so that's why. Because Kendrick's been out just as long as Drake. I think a couple years. No, Drake has been around longer. But point is, as long as Kendrick has been around, Kendrick's been in the game 10 years. I
Yeah.
think, if I'm correct, Good Kid, Mad City dropped in 2014. Section 80 was before that. Most people didn't know him at that point. But point being, Kendrick has been around more than 10 years. Why we never heard the writing thing? It's that same example of the misbehaving kid versus the honor roll student. I guess Dash lost service. Let's see if she comes back. And Dash is back with us. So I was just saying, to me, the Drake thing is the same as the bad kid, quote unquote, and the straight A student example. Um, and even if it's not, it's the pot calling the kettle black, because it's like, well, we know you have writers, so you saying somebody else has writers, it's like, I agree it's not fair, but it's like, this is why it's happening though.
Okay. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to sleep at night, whether they write their own music or not. So it's fine. I, it's just confusing to me, like that. Rather not confusing, but it's just sometimes frustrating to me because we're not. I get that that's how we reconcile things in our own lives, and that I understand that, but I also think that as a public figure, you're held to a different standard. So I think that are, I think that it is wise to question things and want to know what the truth is. So that's my only thing, because it comes up so much in hip hop that it's like, okay, so somebody put it out there, and I'm not saying Drake, but somebody put it out there that this writing thing about Kendrick. Like, I'm not trying to take Kendrick down or anything like that. I hope that it doesn't come off that way. I'm just asking questions that I think we should be asking, and that's really it. If it was someone else, I would ask the same question about someone else. Um, so that's it. I mean, you know, they both make good music. Think what you want. I know, obviously, there are plenty of people who like one more than they like the other, and that's fine, but the reality of the situation is they both make contributions to the culture that we support. So it's fine either way, I think. But I do understand, when it's hip hop, it's something that you know we have to talk about. So
Or not. Simba says no. Simba says that shit don't matter no more. I disagree, but that was Simba's stance. Simba's stance was, this is not about who's the best rapper. It's about who can make hit records. That's what we're all trying to do, make hit records.
right,
So I don't agree with that, but I'm not in the industry. So
you're not trying to make hit records.
I think when you aim to make hit records, it's a very different ball game than the person who's just trying to create art. I think there's a big difference between the painter who says, I'm going to just paint what's on my mind, on my heart, on my soul, than the painter who says, I'm trying to sell each of whatever I do, I got to sell it for at least $1 million.
Right.
I think those are two different type of artists. I think those are two type of musical artists, two different kind of painters. I don't think they should be mentioned in the same group. What Black Thought does is very different than what Drake does. What Lupe Fiasco does is very different than what Drake does. I think there's a difference in the types of artists, And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I just think they're two different classes of artists. And then I think there's someone in the middle, like Simba. Simba is a person who is lyrical. Simba is a person who can make great music, not necessarily only hit records. Um, I think balance is key. I think you should be able to do a little bit of everything and anything that you do. I think being a master of an art form or anything, right? Being a master of electrician, right? If you're a master electrician, you don't just put panels together. You also know how to do very basic wiring. So, yeah, I don't think it's only hit making and aiming to write hits. That's the only thing that matters. No, I don't think so.
I've smiled because what you said made me think of recent comments by Jill Scott, which I will not repeat, but
Oh, I must have missed that.
we can talk about it offline, but we should not go down that road. But you know, if you know, you know, it made me think of laying cement. So
Gotcha.
anyway, yeah, no, I totally understand where you're coming from, and like I said, I'm disconnected from it, um, in that way. So I'm always willing to learn and listen. Um, but you know, not without asking my questions or, you know, feeding my curiosity for certain things. I want to make sure that, you know, I'm thinking critically. And you know, if I'm going to expect other people to do so, I have to do the same. So,
Right. No, I got you. And I'm happy to come here and discuss it. I thought it was a good topic to dive into because when you said on the pod, we know they both have writers, I was like, whoa, what? Huh? What she mean by that? What's she talking about? So I thought it was a good topic to talk about. And we did discuss it off pod, but I thought it was a good thing to speak about in the public forum.
yeah, sure. This was good.
Yes, and long. So now we're out of here.
Yeah.
Enjoy your weekend, and we will see y'all on Monday.
Bye.